I'm Avery Benson.
I'm Delia Gibbs.
I'm Anna Riley, and our topic is school safety, and we are now open for questions.
All right, let's start off. School safety, good thing, bad thing? What are we thinking?
It's a good thing.
I figured I'd lobby a softball. All right, so I see from your prompt, this is very important to me because this is my area of service here at the school, is school safety. So what do we feel like the status of safety in school is? Do we feel like we're paying a lot of attention to it right now? Do we feel like we're not? Are there areas that are pretty obvious, areas that we need to improve upon?
In our school specifically?
Sure.
I'd say we're pretty good with safety. We
That's
do
the right
lockdown
answer.
drills. There's like, I feel like there's not, like there is things you can do to prepare, but when something actually goes wrong, it's really hard to know how you're going to actually react. But I think we're doing good preparing for it.
And for a small private Christian school that hasn't had many issues in the past, I think we're very.
We don't have a lot of like things that you can see that seem like they're keeping it safe, but when you walk in, I like how there's always someone at the door in the morning. I think that's a good issue.
What other school safety measures do we see that are enacted here that may not be elsewhere? Safety officer you mentioned, Julia?
Officer Hart.
Officer Hart.
We have Officer Hart who, and I know he's always around. We see him everywhere, and he comes to our classes often. Like, I feel like as a school as a whole, we're very familiar with him and comfortable around him.
And we have the 10-10 rule.
Right.
And we like lock our doors all the time. So I think that's important.
In your opinion, who's responsible for school safety?
Personally, yeah, I think it's everyone, but a lot of it is in like our peers, like our students, like making sure that their like mental health is okay, like checking up on people, like making sure everyone's like happier, like that they're not going to act out or do anything crazy.
Yes, and with peers, like acknowledging that we have rules for a reason, like the 10-10 rule, and not opening the doors for people. Like those are rules that, we kind of laugh about, but they're important and they keep us safe, and it's our job to like uphold them.
That's a tough one because you guys are so well behaved.
Right.
That you hold doors for people, and that's a wonderful thing. But I'm serious. That is a unique situation to the environment we find ourselves in. That we almost have to say, please don't hold the door for somebody. But no, you should hold the door, unless we're in a situation where those doors are locked. Do not let them in. So it's a unique road for LCA that we don't like it when you hold the door sometimes. Ladies, let's talk a little bit about things that have brought school safety to the forefront of our national consciousness. Something that probably, when I was younger, wasn't as prevalent as far as something we would pay attention to. What are those things that we've seen recently in the headlines and the news that have caused us to really focus on this particular topic?
Well, obviously, school shootings have become a lot more prevalent in the past few years, and there have been, in the past 10 years, there's been 180 school shootings and 356 victims. And there's been from 2009 to about 2015, there was just some every year. Sandy Hook in 2012 was an exception. That makes the victims that year go way up. But from 2016 to 2018, the amount injured and killed has just skyrocketed. And I have to think that's because of social media and online stuff like that, because bullying is one of the biggest parts that makes people want to do a school shooting. And so with social media, it's just caused isolation and it's lessened people's coping skills. And so they think it's okay to just go out and shoot the people that they could.
Social media causes isolation. I thought it was social. I thought it was expanding our reach of being social.
No, it gives. Go ahead.
Please.
Yep.
Take turns. It's fine.
You go ahead.
Okay, well, it just it makes you realize all you care about is your likes and your followers. But when it really comes down to it, if something happened to you and you're in the hospital, who would really show up? The people that are liking your photo are your true friends. It just makes you. It's under the facade that you have hundreds of likes and hundreds of followers, but no one's truly there for you.
Yeah, and I saw they did a study once, and it was on Facebook or something like that, and it was for every 100 friends you have on Facebook, 4 of those people you actually are close with and know you well. So I think that just shows it gives you that idea that you're around people all the time because you're seeing what they're doing and you think you know what's going on, but really you're in your home looking at your phone, you're not with people around
So you guys are lucky you get to go to a small private school. You feel pretty safe here. You know your peers extremely well. What about the public schools? What are your opinions on the safety measures that they've implemented? You know, I know there's high schools in town where you have to go through a metal detector to get into the school. They have officers too. Can you all comment about if those are, if that's proven to reduce things that might happen in school, potential incidents? Is there any statistics to support that?
Yes.
Yes.
I found an article from Princeton, I believe, or it was some like Northwestern, something like that, and or the American School Health Association, and they got a lot of data from various locations, from like New York and Texas, and kind of high schools all over. And some of the schools saw a minor like single-digit decrease in violence, but then other schools reported that a lot of the students felt less safe by having to go through metal detectors and having to see security guards standing there because they're like, wow, like something actually could happen. And it like emotionally made them feel uncomfortable. But overall, there's not much like correlation.
It's not that hard to get around a metal detector either if you're determined to carry something bad.
And with how many students, with obviously we go to a small school, but with public schools they have a significant like higher amount of students than we do. So in the mornings when they're going through, if you're having to get a bag checked in the morning, they're not being thorough. They're not really looking. They're just kind of, you know, peeking in and like looking. It's not really doing.
However, when I was researching, I did find one method that I thought at first I was kind of like, that won't work, but then I was actually watching the news after the recent school shooting, and they had a segment on Marshall County back when they had their shooting in 2018. They said, they asked their students, what is going to make you feel safe coming back to school on Monday? And they said, check our bags. So for the rest of that school year, I think it was in January or February, so for several months they checked every single bag that came into the school. And it was obviously really draining because that's a lot of bags, thousands of students. And so after that, for the next year, they said no backpacks. And they said you can bring a gym bag or a purse, but you have to go get it checked. And I thought that was not practical. Like, how could you carry all your stuff? But for a community that's been through that kind of trauma, like, they made it work, and it seems more realistic to me now.
So, but like was it last week there was the school shooting in California, and they weren't even in the doors yet, right? Were they, you know, so do you find, you mentioned mental health and bullying being, and again, you guys are lucky, you know your classmates pretty well, but when you have these schools, my school, there were over 600 kids in my graduating class, so when somebody's in that situation, you put yourself in a larger school, how do you identify a person, like you said, sometimes somebody made a comment that they might be using social media to, where there might be clues or hints on social media as to what they're thinking. How in a school those sizes can you identify those people?
So I think Avery might have some facts on it, but there's a suggested number for how many the student to counselor ratio. And
Yes.
do you have that?
Yes, the recommended number is 1 counselor for every 125 students. But unfortunately, in California and Arizona, I believe they have 1 counselor for like 800 or 900 students. So the ratio is way off. But there's other measures that they can utilize. Like I have family friends that live in Atlanta, and like their mom was at my house last night, and she said that in the past 2 years they implemented like a service where you can anonymously text the school counselor and administration. So if you have personal concerns about your mental health or concerns about other students around you, like you can send those in. And they said that they've seen like a major decrease in violence and like mental health and everything like that. So I think that's a helpful measure.
And one of the things with the anonymous hotline, or just like talking about like someone made a threat or someone's bullying someone else, or I'm concerned for that person's mental health, it's important that you identify the difference between like telling on someone, like snitching, and like trying to help someone out. And because, so what they said was like telling on someone, that was for your personal gain, but just reporting something that
For the general good.
Yeah, the general
that
good.
is that would help people to report more things and keep it safer.
So here at LCA, if you guys, and this is the see something, say something, right? Because you guys, being students here, 750-ish kids on this campus, you're gonna see something way before an administrator, right? There's very few of us, and there's a whole lot more of you, and you guys know your peers better. And so you would know if there was something that felt off, or you heard of something that felt off. Do you ladies feel confident that you would have the right avenue to report something like that? Do you feel like, hey, if something happened, if I just felt like Anna Riley was just maybe not in a great place, and do you feel like you knew the correct course to report that or to make that aware to somebody in administration?
Personally, I don't. Like, I know that there are people,
Mhm.
but I'm not fully aware of who to go to. Like, I was asking Ms. Kett when we were like researching for this. I was like, do we have a mental health counselor? And she was like, yeah, Ms. Donovan used to be part of it, and some other people. And I was like, I didn't even know that. I wasn't aware.
I feel the same.
I feel kind of that way, but also with Justin Orth being hired recently, I feel like he's someone that I would be comfortable going to, and I think that was like adding him to the faculty was like great improvement.
So knowing your spiritual life director
Our
and your
spiritual
counselors,
director is
you
someone-
could seek out,
Yeah.
or a trusted faculty member
Right.
maybe.
And I think we have plenty of teachers.
Yeah, there's
And just as a
well.
PSA, we do have an anonymous hotline here, it's
Yeah.
a bullying hotline, but you could use that in that same situation. So the look on your face, Avery, tells me I need to
I-
circulate that information more.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but see, this is a great discussion topic, right? This is great feedback. So I apologize for pulling you away from what you've researched, but that's good for me to know that we need to get that information out a little bit better.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something else that I've seen. I think Fayette County, and I'm speaking a little bit out of my knowledge base, but I believe they actually require their students to wear their student IDs around their neck. I believe I see lanyards and IDs hanging. Certainly our faculty and staff have an ID with their picture on it. They should have it somewhere near them because they can't get to the building or use the copier by design without it. Do you think that that is something that is beneficial to schools and making sure that all of you ladies and gentlemen have your student ID and around your neck? Is that something that would be beneficial in our setting as Fayette County has decided it is in theirs?
In our school, personally, I don't think we need that. I don't, at our school, just with how small we are, I feel safe here. I don't think that's something that we need right now. Public schools, I think it helps. I think with how many students they have and they have a lot more risk, I think it probably helps with them, but I don't think we need to.
Okay, ladies, do you agree with that?
I didn't really research into it to see if it's very effective at
Just
all.
asking your personal opinion.
but
Yep.
I don't think there's a need for it at LCA with such the low rate of violence that we have. It's just,
I feel like a lot of the shootings that I see or that get the most attention are current students.
Mhm.
Obviously, some of them are past students even, so I don't know if they changed the lanyards, but I don't think it would be, I mean, whether you have a lanyard on or not, you can still shoot someone.
So having a student ID around your neck doesn't prevent necessarily a violent situation.
Especially
Plus,
coming
if-
from a student.
plus, if shootings are occurring before school in the parking lot or after school, what's the purpose for it?
Fantastic point. You listed on here ID scanners, lockdown procedures. What are you prepared to talk about lockdown procedures?
Well, I did a little bit of research and I found that there was a preschool teacher who she made a comment for an interview or something, and she said that like her preschoolers are doing lockdown drills, and like at first that sounds normal to me, but then I really think about it. I'm like, these kids are being told that they're getting locked in a room and like the lights are getting turned off and they're just sitting there freaking out. They don't have their parents, they don't know what's happening. And the teacher said that she has to tell them that that the principal's like stopping the bears. She's like, they're hunting for the bears, like they're keeping them away from us. And like these kids are just bawling, crying, and they don't even know what's happening. And a lot of the parents made complaints and said that it was like emotionally like tormenting for these children and things like that. But I also, like as high schoolers, I know that lockdown drills are very important and they do bring comfort for a lot of the administration and the students to know that we have something to do in case there was an incident. But there's just a lot of pros and cons either way.
For me personally, I think lockdown drills just have to happen at our age, at a high school level. That's when you really need them. But even, I can remember when I was at the Tates Creek campus and we did a lockdown drill and I was young. And I can remember doing that and at first not knowing what it was. I can't remember specifically when it was, but I remember it. And I just was thinking back and I was like, I don't know how old I was maybe 5th grade or something like that. But I don't know if I needed to know how to do that at that age, because I don't think there's a concern for like school safety. I mean, at that age for like a school shooter or something like that with lockdowns.
Sandy Hook? What do we know about Sandy Hook?
It was an elementary school.
Elementary school.
It was.
Yeah.
And on the scale of mass shootings, where does it fall?
It was
Nice.
large.
Yeah.
In your research, did you have a chance to talk to any teachers here at LCA about how they feel about active shooter trainings?
I know a few teachers. I think I talked to Ms. Kett a little bit about it, and I remember talking to Mr. Perkins last year about armed teachers, and he got really
We know where he
offended.
stands.
He got really offended
He got
because he was
mad.
like, "You guys," like he asked our class in general, like, "Do you guys think that I should have a gun?" And we were all like,
Yeah, I actually remember I was the only one who
Yeah,
said
Anna Riley
anything.
spoke out loud, and
Because I
she
was
was
like,
like,
no, I don't want you to have a gun, and he got really, he
Yeah.
was offended, and I was like, I'm sorry, I don't want you to have a gun.
Yeah, he got really upset about
Yeah.
it, and we were
And we
like,
laugh about it, but-
there's just, you don't have enough time to train fully
Yeah.
to like be fully prepared for it,
Mm-hmm.
and plus we don't know how he would actually react when a shooter came, like if he would actually be able to pull the trigger. So I just think there's a lot of things.
There were also concerns raised for if the police finally got there and there was like 2 people with guns and they're like,
They could shoot
who's
the
the
teacher.
person?
So if Officer Hart has his gun, that makes you feel safe because he's trained?
Yes.
That's, yes.
And they've
He has
done,
proper training.
they've done the mental health checks on him, like they know he's fit to be equipped with like an armed,
That's his
or like
job.
a weapon, yes.
Also on him, like it's on his body, so I don't think a teacher would have it on them, they would have it like, hopefully locked in a safe or something in their desk, but I feel like it would be more accessible to students or someone trying to access it.
Do you find that, do you talk about this with your family, and do you ever find that, like, your parents might say something that's contrary to what you've been told at school as part of a lockdown procedure? I will say when, like, my kids were over at the other campus, I was like, you jump out a window, I don't care, you
Yeah.
go out of the building, no,
Right.
I don't care what they say. I'm guilty of that. Do you find that, like, you have, parents sometimes tell you things that might be contrary to what the school knows is best?
I think I can remember in times my mom, like adding things that she's like, I know they don't tell you this at school, but this is what I would want you to do. I can't think of anything specific right now, but yes.
My parents are a little bit split. My dad tells me, because like my dad's very protective over me, so he's like, grab your backpack, put a bunch of textbooks in it, like
Right.
hide in the corner, like cover yourself. But then my
Protect yourself
mom
at all
is
costs.
more of like a independent woman, so she's like, go like fight if you need to. Like go, like, go
Yeah.
But then my dad's like, no, go hide in the corner. I'll just do whatever I feel like doing.
What, ladies, as certainly the prevalence of school shooting is on the rise, what has your research shown you that school systems have done that may have helped prevent school shootings? I've certainly heard about situations of people being identified before being arrested or found with, a cache of weapons, and so the inference being that they were going to use those. Have we seen any situations where there's been a preventative measure that's been put in place that has helped curb the potential of a school shooting?
A lot of the time, when I hear about like a student having a weapon on campus and them apprehending it before they can do anything with it, or maybe they didn't even plan to do something with it, they just had it, I think it's someone telling the authorities. So maybe the best preventative measure is just making sure, like we've already talked about it, but like know who to tell and why you need to tell.
What do you think about situations, for example, like, because it's not always student on student, obviously Sandy Hook was a faculty member's son, but like we had the incident where he's the uncle of a student here in Lawrenceburg, where the state trooper found the guy because the guy put an ugly post on some woman in another state's Facebook page about her kids, and said that they were going to do some harm. How do you even begin to tackle something like that? Because had that lady not followed her gut and said,
Right.
I'm going to call the Kentucky State Police, and had they not trusted that this was a real threat. I mean, they found the guy with all these guns in the trunk